Sunday, February 12th, 12:41 p.m., parents' house. My mom said jokingly that I should have worn socks in the Ask Mr. Regular video. I know she was just joking. She was only making conversation, but I didn't know what to say. I just stood still with my laptop bag over my shoulder. She told me she wanted to leave a comment, but she didn't know how. She said, "I just wanted to say, didn't I get you socks for Christmas?" She was just kidding, but I was playing an old surveillance tape in my head when she said that. It's 2004, and Mom is crying at the kitchen table, and I'm sitting across from her motionless. She's crying and saying, "I feel like you're slipping away from God. Slipping away from God." And then she cried some more. See, back in 2004, my mom found a printout of my script for a college film. It was chock full of dick jokes, just like RCR is today. My favorite scene in this little short film was where my character went for the limp shot. I mean, what happened was my character goes into a bathroom and then emerges a few seconds later, shirtless and wearing a sombrero. The joke was he jerks off to orgasm faster than he can get erect, hence limp shot. See, I thought that was funny, and my mom thought that was really bad, and she wanted me to go see the pastor and have a prayer meeting. My dad was never that fundamental, but he still went to church. My dad would say things like, "You have to be very careful about how you're perceived by others." To my mom and dad's credit, they were right. I got fired from a lot of jobs for just saying stupid things. It was the same deal with K to 12th grade. And all the guidance teachers knew me well. College, too. Student counseling services, RAs, CAs, they all knew me. One time a professor said to me, exasperated, Why do you say these things?" So I understood why my parents would go through my old stuff looking for bad things, like that script. I know why my dad would open my mail, both sent and received. They were trying to protect me from myself. Sent mail, Dad was especially curious about. He didn't open every piece of mail I put in the mailbox, but most of them. Government mail he always opened. Tax forms, health insurance. I would try to do my own taxes. I'd put them in the mailbox. Dad would take the letter out of the mailbox, open up the letter, make sure I did it right, put it back in the letter, put it into a new envelope with a stamp on it, and then put it back. Because what if I wrote something weird on there and Crown Victorias would show up at the house a week later? I understand their thinking. They want to protect me, and they still do. But it was hard to be creative, or at least write things or film things or take photos or draw things I thought were creative. I remember drawing art and after scanning it, burning the original. I'd take that piece of Bristol board and take it out to the backyard to the burn pile where Dad would burn leaves and yard clippings, and I'd put a lighter to it. That way no one would know. The same went for journals. I'd write it and burn it. I wouldn't dare crumple it up and throw it out. You can always reach into a wastebasket and pull things out. I only told my parents about YouTube 2 years ago when I knew I was making enough money to leave Pennsylvania if they disowned me. After all, I'm sinning. Remember the first time we went to California to be on the Smoking Tire? Yeah, I told my parents it was a road and track gig. Yeah, an assignment for Road and Track, because Road and Track is a respected publication. "Our son works for Road and Track magazine." That sounds nice. That's a nice thing. Say it to the whole congregation. "My son writes for Road and Track magazine." No one's going to be offended. Regular car reviews, on the other hand. And now they're watching it. They're watching this. I'm 15 years old again, and they're watching, assessing, categorizing, making a note of what I'm saying and doing. They're listening to my phone conversations. But this upbringing, being watched by a Senator Joseph McCarthy all the time, gave me the observational skills I needed for this type of writing. It shaped the way I write. Every car has a meaning. Every move a driver makes carries significance. In all little things is a sea of information. The washing machine spins, one more load to go. 8:33 p.m., my apartment, later that night. A big mess of leftovers is simming in a saucepan. Ground beef, rice, chicken breasts, bell peppers, mixed vegetables, and a few pierogies, because why not? When the mixture gets hot enough, I'll grate some cheese over everything. Fuel. Tomorrow morning is Monday, and people I don't know are waiting for the Chevy HHR video to release. They don't know for sure that it's an HHR, but most have guessed. On Monday mornings, while you're watching the video, I'm editing next week's video. A Bruce Hen's Garage coffee mug steams on my desk, and either a Fiber One bar or a day-old donut sits on a plate. Caffeine and sugar. Fine excitement and mood lifters. I wonder which I like more, caffeine or alcohol. Some people's shoelaces obey them. They don't have to tie double knots. I put my parents through a lot. I put my brother through a lot. I'm still here. It's almost Valentine's Day. There are 4 saved cities on my weather app. Los Angeles, because that's where everybody is. Anchorage, Alaska, because that's where I used to be. Coventry, England, because that's where I'm going to be. And Wellington, New Zealand, because that's where I want to be. February 22nd, Mannheim Diner. Lunch with Dan Solner. We see a gaunt man walking along Route 61, talking to himself. Dan doesn't want to be a nursing student anymore. He wants to stitch Nissan 240 seats and be a director. The waitress suggests onion rings. A ham beast sits at the booth across from us. I'm glad Caswell Parker and Andrew Lamb aren't here to see this blob and her squirt son in a black t-shirt with an intense wolf and a moon on it. He's not wearing the 3-wolf moon shirt, just one wolf and one moon. A lone wolf. So this lone wolf guy with mom is wearing a black starter cap that says USA on the front of it. Ugh, this mother's face is sinking back into her head, and she's wearing a moo-moo, black and blue moo-moo. And her son has a bald spot. He just took off his hat. I'm glad Sparky isn't here to see all 3 of them. Yeah, all 3 of them would just... I'm glad Sparky isn't here. She and Andrew and Caswell would get right back on the next flight to New Zealand if they saw this. I like the Mannheim. I like it more for its view and for its seats than for its food. This place also has a liquor license, so you can get pancakes and drink beer at the same time. Thursday, February 23rd, 1:42 p.m., front porch swing at my parents' house. It's 70 degrees Fahrenheit here. Feels like a spring day, unseasonably warm. These brief warm days make the townsfolk skip and trot like we all won some magnificent war. We repelled enemy winter. Try not to think of these days as fleeting. Enjoy them. Don't politicize warm winter days. I'm thinking a lot about Dan Solner from yesterday and how he isn't too hot on the idea of continuing his college to become an RN, or at least that's the mood he threw out. He wants to do automotive upholstery and start a business making OEM-like interiors for Nissan S13s. He bought a sewing machine and a few rolls of leather and other fabric and a seat frame on which to practice. I hope you keep at it, Dan. Finding an upholsterer who knows how to redo 80s and 90s Japanese sports car seats in rural Pennsylvania is impossible because in my county there isn't any. There's none who do this. There is one guy who does seats, like general seats, in one town over from me, but he'll be retiring soon. And there's another man out by the highway, He's not retiring, but his health is so poor he rarely stands. I went to see him once at his shop, and he has all his equipment laid out so he can scoot his steel office chair from one station to the other, metal wheels clacking on the hardwood floor. He does this so he can go to each station without getting up out of his chair. All of his stations were laid out in a semicircle around his chair, and when I was in there I saw a 12-inch CRT TV VCR combo sit on his workbench turned to network news, of course. Most of these old men only know classic Americana stuff anyway. Dan could corner the market in East Central PA. One time, this is unrelated. One time Ted Stoltz and I were walking in my town and came up on a man, woman, and a baby in a stroller. They were squatting on the front step of a model train and hobby shop. I don't know how that place stays in business. I never see anybody in there. How many single-digit kids are jonesing for a model train set or puzzles these days? Well, just because you have a business doesn't mean you have a profitable business. Maybe his real line is eBay, and this quaint corner shop is just for living out a Norman Rockwell fantasy. I'll bet he sells hard candy in I'll bet he sells hard candy in glass jars right on the counter, too. Anyway, this mother and father were squatting out of the front of the hobby shop, and they were dressed in XXL shirts and sweatpants. Dad was pushing a baby in a stroller back and forth a few inches, pacifying it. The stroller was one of those cheap folding jobs you see in every Goodwill or thrift shop. You know, the kind that have tiny plastic wheels that don't work on gravel and get caught up on sidewalk cracks. That's what they had. The husband looks up at me and says, "Is there nothing to eat in this town but Italian?" And I said, "Not really. There's a Subway out at the end of town if you feel like hoofing it all the way out there." I knew they wouldn't because the sidewalk ends before the strip mall, and they'd have to carry that stroller over a tiny grass field. February 24th, Kutztown University, Kutztown, Pennsylvania, 70-plus degrees Fahrenheit, 1:04 p.m. Long pants aren't necessary today. I see a 40-year-old man walking down Main Street wearing a kilt. Jeep Wranglers are driving everywhere with their doors off. I walk through Sheridan Art Studio again. Whole lot of nothing going on in here. A vending machine in Sheridan Art Studio sells hummus for $3 for a tiny cup. I see an art exhibit. It's a clay model of a wide vagina about the size of a radiator with a long gourd sticking out of the middle. 1:09 p.m., same day. I'm at a concrete table between D. Francisco Building and the Student Union Building. And there's a girl in real Ray-Ban aviator sunglasses and long blonde happy hour hair. She drinks an iced tea in a clear plastic cup with a straw. She has options, and she's weighing them. Next to her, a black hooded dark hair girl on a laptop, and she's also wearing a black Nike headband. She looks contemplative, and she's more my type. 1:30 p.m., parking lot behind Student Union Building. It's Ben Wright again. He picked up a 1981 Honda CM400 motorcycle. It's a parallel twin with twin carburetors, pod filters, and a 2-into-1 exhaust that goes into a Harley Sportster muffler. I forgot how much fun these bikes were. I just rode it around the parking lot for a little bit. 8:11 p.m. What day is this? 8:11 p.m. Maybe it's the same day. Yeah, it must have been a Friday. 8:11 p.m. Burger bar with good beer list, and I'm having dinner with my boxing instructor. Happy beer, feeling fine, talking. I overhear a conversation next to me. It's coming from a checkered shirted dad type talking on his phone, very seriously. Here are the bits of the conversation that I hear. Only from him, of course, because it's a phone conversation. "Don't tell Haley. I'll call you back. You're not supposed to be home alone. This is your uncle talking. I will call you back, but you have to. You have to." It's an intense conversation. "Logan, your mother is calling you. Answer her." This is a man trying to solve some sort of family problem over the phone. I'll never have kids. This is the kind of things I don't want to deal with. I'm never having kids.